On this Tuesday night, Donald Trump loses a major legal battle. A top U.S. court rules he is not immune from prosecution.
No one is above the law.
The reasons, his response, and his next legal hurdles. King Charles seen for the first time since his cancer diagnosis. Is it a moment to reconcile with his youngest son? Plus questions about his planned visit to Canada. Dreading a disastrous deja vu, why a northern Canadian town fears another ferocious wildfire season.
He's got the red, white, blue, brown hound.
Plus, he was rebellious, revered, and red, white, and blue.
You give me a great idea and I'll write you a great song.
Tributes to country music giant Toby Keith.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with a court ruling in the U.S. which found former American President Donald Trump can be put on trial for attempting to stay in power after losing the 2020 presidential election. The three judges on the federal appeals court wrote, "We cannot accept former President Trump's claim that a president has unbounded authority to commit crimes that would neutralize the most fundamental check on executive power. It means Trump is not above the law, though he intends to appeal, claiming immunity is a must. Trump is the first former U.S. president to face criminal charges. There are 4 separate ongoing cases. In our top story tonight, Jackson Proskow looks at whether this decision brings him closer to a trial.
Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore.
Never had a sitting president so brazenly defied the will of voters.
We will never give up. We will never concede.
More than 3 years later, an appeals court ruled Donald Trump can be prosecuted for his alleged attempts to overturn the election he lost. From his actions in the White House to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol.
The president has to have immunity. And the other thing is I did nothing wrong.
Though Trump continues to claim he and all other presidents cannot be prosecuted, a 3-judge panel disagreed, ruling any executive immunity that may have protected him while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution. Legally speaking, the former president is now just an ordinary citizen.
It's really important. Legally, it's really important. Procedurally, it is a reaffirmation in this country. No one is above the law.
In August, special counsel Jack Smith indicted Trump on charges of conspiracy and obstruction for alleged election subversion. Trump's immunity appeal put the trial on hold. In its scathing opinion, the appeals court weighed in on the charges, arguing Trump allegedly injected himself into a process in which the president has no role. They added, if upheld, Trump's immunity argument would collapse our system of separated powers by placing the president beyond the reach of all 3 branches.
The court said that, look, yes, presidents need to be given discretion to execute their constitutional duties, but that discretion does not extend to violating federal law.
Trump has already vowed to appeal to the Supreme Court. He must do so by Monday. Whether the High Court takes up the case will determine whether a trial about the last election will take place before the next one.
And Jackson is with me now. Jackson, the U.S. Supreme Court is set to rule on another question about Trump that could affect his ability to run for president again. Tell us about that one.
That's right, Donna. On Thursday, the court will hear arguments in the Colorado ballot case. That state pulled Trump off the ballots, arguing that he is ineligible for office because he committed an insurrection. The case is being watched closely by other states and could have an impact on whether Trump remains on the ballot in several other states. And Donna, it's an urgent matter because Colorado's primary is coming up in early March.
Jackson Proskow in Washington tonight. Thanks. And here's a sign of what it's like to run for office in the U.S. Nikki Haley, Donald Trump's only rival for the Republican presidential nomination, has applied for protection from the U.S. Secret Service. Her campaign says she has faced multiple threats, though they didn't reveal specifics. The home of the former U.S. ambassador to the UN has been targeted in 2 swatting incidents in the past 2 months. Homeland Security will now do a threat assessment and decide if she will get Secret Service protection. Security at the U.S.-Mexico border is a big part of a $118 billion bipartisan immigration bill in the U.S. that appears to be falling apart. Today, President Joe Biden urged Congress to pass it and blamed Donald Trump for being behind the effort to kill it.
Now, all indications are this bill won't even move forward to the Senate floor. Why? A simple reason. Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump thinks it's bad for him politically.
Biden is urging Congress to show some spine and stand up to Trump. Trump has been pushing congressional leaders to reject the deal, which ties border changes to aid for Ukraine and Israel. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer vows the Democrats will keep at it. Prince Harry has flown from California to London to see his dad, King Charles, less than 24 hours after it was revealed the king has cancer. Harry was seen arriving at Clarence House, the king's residence in London. It's believed Harry hadn't seen his father since the king's coronation last May. King Charles has already begun cancer treatment. He's stepped back from public duties, and royal watchers wonder if Harry's visit is a sign of a private reconciliation between father and son. Redmond Shannon reports.
The first glimpse of the king since he started cancer treatment. Charles and Camilla heading from Clarence House to Buckingham Palace before flying off to Sandringham Estate. Almost nothing is known about the type of cancer the king has, but an optimistic insight came from Prime Minister Rishi Sunak speaking with the BBC.
Shocked and sad, and just all our thoughts are with him and his family. And, thankfully, this has been caught early.
Despite the early diagnosis, Prince Harry spared no time in getting to London from California, a meeting with a father he's barely seen in recent years.
This whole family feud thing seems a bit silly in my opinion. They should make up, and hopefully this brings them together a little bit more.
I don't know how much things will change. People are talking about, this is the breakthrough. We don't know. But illness has a way of just putting everything in perspective, and I think that's what this is.
Harry and Meghan's departure from royal life, part of a dwindling roster of senior royals. The disgraced Prince Andrew also stepping aside before the deaths of Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth. And now serious health issues for the Princess of Wales, recovering from abdominal surgery, and for the King. Charles and Camilla's reported plans to visit Canada in the spring now up in the air.
I think it's very difficult to predict where the royal family will be in May and how busy a schedule they will have, particularly in terms of overseas tours. We certainly have seen in the past royal travel arrangements being adjusted in various ways in the event of health crises.
The ever-busy Princess Anne and her brother Prince Edward may pick up some of the slack if they can find the time.
There is no sense of when the king will return to public duties, but what we do know is that his son Prince William will return to public life on Wednesday, having taken a break while his wife Catherine, the Princess of Wales, recovers from her surgery. Donna?
Redmond Shannon outside Buckingham Palace. Thanks, Redmond. Large parts of Southern California remain under flood warnings, and there's a rare tornado warning for San Diego. At least 3 deaths have now been linked to that record-breaking rain. There's a state of emergency in at least 8 counties in California. Hundreds of mudslides have been reported in the Los Angeles area since Sunday. Downtown LA has been inundated with 6 months' worth of rainfall. In Atlantic Canada, tens of thousands of people are still digging their way out of some of the heaviest snowfall in decades. Up to 1 metre has fallen from central Prince Edward Island to Halifax and north towards Cape Breton. Where there is so much snow, a local state of emergency is still in place. As Heidi Petracek reports, some rural communities warn it could be days before the roads are cleared.
The cleanup will be a long one.
My car was completely buried 2 hours ago, so we're making progress.
About 60 centimeters fell in the Charlottetown area, walls of snow hemming in some secondary roads.
It's like driving through a tunnel.
The storm dumped an estimated 150 centimeters on Sydney as it brought all of Cape Breton to a halt, prompting people like Henry Obu to lend a hand.
We just need more hands on deck.
The Cape Breton Regional Municipality declared a local state of emergency Sunday in an effort to get federal and provincial assistance. The mayor has a list of at least 200 people who need help digging out.
It's been a really rough few days. People are worried. Panic is setting in because there are people that are isolated. They can't get out of their houses.
About 45 kilometers from Sydney, the Eskazoni First Nation also declared a state of emergency for the same reason.
We're getting a lot of calls from EHS, getting people to dialysis for emergency. We're having issues with that.
The federal and Nova Scotia governments have pledged to send extra heavy equipment to Cape Breton, and Ottawa is also offering air support to deliver supplies.
As the big cleanup continues, criticism has been piled on top of Nova Scotia's premier after Tim Houston questioned the Cape Breton Regional Municipality's state of emergency declaration.
What a state of emergency does not do is get you a plow faster. Was it more of just a kind of a PR issue is kind of what I'm wondering.
I'm hoping it was simply a slip of the tongue.
The premier has since apologized for his remarks, calling them, quote, a poor choice of words. Political dust-up aside, officials are asking for patience. Even with snow melters like this, digging out and cleaning up will take days. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
2023 was the worst wildfire season on record in Canada, and the Northwest Territories was devastated. Nearly 70% of the population was displaced as fires burned across 4 million hectares last summer. Melissa Ridgen explains why people there are looking for answers and accountability ahead of what they fear could be an even worse wildfire season this year.
The terror is still fresh.
The only highway out was on fire. So it was completely engulfed in flames.
Elena Katz and her husband loaded up their alpacas and cattle dogs last August as the wood buffalo fire threatened their home in Fort Smith. They raced towards Hay River as directed. But within hours of arriving at what was supposed to be a safe haven, Hay River was evacuated to Alberta through Enterprise, the only highway out already ablaze.
Our truck caught fire. And my husband and I got out with just what we were wearing. We couldn't save our animals. And we're alive because somebody stopped on the highway and rescued us.
Nearly 90% of Enterprise leveled.
It's an absolute miracle that there was no loss of human life.
More than 20,000 people were forced to evacuate last summer, scattered in neighboring provinces for a month. When they returned in September, they wanted answers and accountability over the fire management, communication with the public, and the handling of the evacuations. Katz and 1,100 others, including municipal and Indigenous leaders, have signed a petition demanding a public inquiry.
Also, I think an opportunity for the territorial government to restore public confidence in the government.
Newly elected Premier R.J. Simpson was himself an evacuee.
These were traumatic events. And so we are conducting third-party reviews, independent third-party reviews of the response to the forest fires as well as the evacuations and how those were handled. And those are going to be made public.
But for Territory residents, the worry is when. And without being involved in the process, can their trust in government be restored with the 2024 wildfire season just around the corner? Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
Concerns are also being raised over how one fire was managed by Parks Canada. You can find out why on our website, globalnews.ca/globalnational. Police in BC say a man has been arrested in Nigeria in a tragic case of teenage sextortion. 14-year-old Robin Janjua from Surrey was contacted online last February by someone posing as a teenage girl. He shared some intimate images. Then the person demanded he send money in the form of gift cards. A short time later, he died by suicide. An international investigation led police to Lagos, Nigeria, where a 26-year-old man is now facing 18 charges, including possessing child pornography and extortion. In a statement, Janjua's parents say he loved hockey and loved life. And they say, as we grieve the loss of our son, we want other parents to know this could happen to anyone. Talk to your kids, they say, about internet safety and keep the door to communication open so they can come to you for help. The Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, has announced more money to help renters and low-income Canadians experiencing homelessness.
We need to do what we can to be sure that every Canadian has a roof over their head and warm food to eat.
Freeland announced a $99 million top-up to the Canada Housing Benefit, which delivers one-time rental support payments directly to low-income Canadians. Another $100 million will go to 85 communities across Canada for emergency winter shelter spaces. There is an update tonight on the Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9 plane that lost a door plug mid-flight. According to a preliminary report from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, 4 bolts used to secure the panel were removed at a Boeing factory, and it appears they were not replaced. The panel had been opened to repair damaged rivets on the fuselage of that MAX 9. The report says photo documentation shows evidence of the door plug closed with no retention hardware in 3 visible locations. That panel blew off the Boeing plane on January 5th, forcing pilots to make a harrowing emergency landing. Boeing says it will review the findings. He's waiting to head all the way up to space. Coming up, I'll speak with Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen about what he's doing to prepare for next year's mission. He is set to make history, but it's going to happen a little later than first planned. Astronaut Jeremy Hansen will be the first Canadian to go on a mission around the moon, a lunar flyby. He, along with 3 Americans, are set to go on a 10-day test flight on Artemis II, a brand new program that aims to eventually land humans on the moon again. Artemis I, an unmanned mission, has already made the trip, traveling thousands of miles beyond the moon and back. But NASA has now delayed the launch of Artemis II until September of 2025. It says that will give teams more time to work through some of the challenges. With me from Ottawa is Jeremy Hansen. Jeremy, pleasure to see you again.
Wow, nice to speak with you, Donna.
So this delay, is it a bit frustrating for you that you won't be going up in November, or a little bit reassuring in terms of making sure that everything's safe?
Yeah, definitely the latter. It really felt like the right decision to make. We've learned some things from Artemis I that we realized we could have a closer look at now. We could do some more experimentation here on the ground to make sure we understand some things like the heat shield. For me, it just feels like a really smart decision. Sometimes it's hard for leadership to make those courageous decisions, but I feel very reassured that we've done it in this case.
There was an issue with the heat shields on Artemis I. Is that the biggest concern?
I think that's one of the biggest ones. There's some other things that we're working through. I wouldn't say they're big concerns, but they're definitely challenges. And I mean, this is what I love. I love watching this team dig into these challenges. I see people in their areas of expertise. They're learning new things. We've set some big goals. Humanity is going back to the moon. We're doing it with new infrastructure, new goals to go back to the moon for a sustained presence and eventually Mars. And so you have to expect some challenges along the way. And when you have big challenges like that, you get big results.
Yeah, for sure. Jeremy, what do you do between now and September of 2025? I know you have to keep up a certain level of fitness. You're, of course, a physicist, an astronaut, a fighter pilot. You're an aquanaut. What do your days look like now?
So they're varied. It's really fun. I'm having a great time with the team. But some examples are we're spending quite a bit of time in the simulator, going through some of the mission profile, working with mission control for how we will deal with situations, should they arise during the real mission. So that's really neat to work on that. We're doing a lot of testing of software and systems. We have an upcoming full dress rehearsal for when we land in the Pacific Ocean after the mission. So we'll be in the capsule, and the U.S. Navy will come and remove us from the capsule, put us in a helicopter, take us to a ship. We'll do all of that coming up.
You will be busy. All right. Thanks so much for being with us, Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen in Ottawa. Thanks.
My pleasure.
Fed up farmers ahead. Spain joins a growing wave of protests in Europe. Spanish farmers blocked traffic on more than a dozen major highways, joining farmers who are staging similar protests in other European countries, including France. They're demanding action on high fuel and energy costs, bureaucracy, and competition from non-EU nations. Spain's government says it will distribute 269 million euros in aid to help alleviate the impacts from drought and the war in Ukraine. As Russia's war in Ukraine approaches the 2-year mark, polling suggests Canadians are increasingly split over the future of the conflict. Ipsos polling done for Global News shows nearly 60% of Canadians surveyed believe this country is already doing enough to support Ukraine, up from 52% last year. More than half say Canada cannot afford to give Ukraine more financial aid, an increase of 6% from 2023. As David Aiken explains, the numbers show the softening support for Ukraine is especially being felt among Conservative voters.
All those in favor of the motion will please rise.
The governing Liberals were joined by MPs from the NDP and Bloc Québécois to support a new Canada-Ukraine free trade deal. It's a deal Canadian supporters and the government of Ukraine say will help strengthen Ukraine's economic prospects as it continues to fight off Russian invaders.
All those opposed to the motion.
But the Conservatives voted against it, objecting to a clause in which Canada and Ukraine agree to cooperate on carbon pricing and carbon taxes. Conservative MPs insist they stand behind Ukraine despite their vote against the free trade deal.
We will send Ukraine artillery and rockets, not carbon taxes.
But the Liberals accuse Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre of betraying Ukraine.
He is choosing to not stand with Ukraine, not stand with Ukrainians, and not stand with Ukrainian Canadians. Why are they abandoning Ukraine?
And in fact, new polling data provided exclusively to Global News shows those who identify as Conservative supporters are much more likely to say Canada should be pulling back from Ukraine. For example, 47% of Conservatives agree with the statement, Canada should stay out of Ukraine's problems because Ukraine is not a NATO country and Canada has no treaty obligation to help. Only around 20% of Liberal, NDP, and BQ supporters agreed with that idea. And when it comes to the idea of Ukraine negotiating a peace deal with Russia, even while Russian forces still occupy parts of Ukraine, 40% of Conservatives agree with that plan, while around 25% of supporters of other parties agree.
Polling is one thing, doing the right thing is another thing. Supporting our allies, working with other governments is really important.
No matter how they answered the other questions, more than half of all respondents say they continue to closely follow the news about developments in Ukraine. David Aiken, Global News, Ottawa.
Former Chilean President Sebastián Piñera has died in a helicopter crash. Authorities say the chopper plunged into a lake in southern Chile. 3 others on board survived. The 74-year-old billionaire served 2 terms, one of them during the COVID-19 pandemic, when Chile had one of the highest vaccination rates in the world. Piñera founded a credit card company in the 1970s and was worth an estimated $2.7 billion.
I should have been a cowboy.
Next, how Toby Keith paved his own path in country music. Toby Keith, the American country music singer-songwriter who was unapologetically patriotic, has died. Keith was 62 years old. He'd been undergoing treatment for stomach cancer. Mike Dorley looks at his legacy and why his music could sometimes be polarizing.
Many moons I have lived. My body's weathered and worn.
Toby Keith didn't write this song about himself, but when he stood on stage in 2023, his 6'3" frame gaunt from fighting stomach cancer, there was no denying why he chose to sing it.
He was somebody that wore it on his sleeve, and that's what he was going through. And I can't imagine the gripping battle that anyone has with cancer, let alone being in the public eye when that happens.
Oh, I should have been a cowboy.
When Keith burst onto the country scene in 1993, he was a breath of fresh air. Unlike many other stars, he wrote all his own songs, over 5,000 in his career. But when Nashville, the country capital of America, beckoned, he stayed home in Oklahoma.
Nashville wanted to make him their golden boy, but he's not that guy. He's not a play-by-the-rules kind of guy. And he's like, I just realized I wasn't going to play their game. I was going to do things my way.
And that he certainly did. After 9/11, he released this song,
Brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue,
which became something of an ode to American patriotism.
All of the extreme left was hating on it, and all extreme right on it was using me as their poster child.
And when he agreed to sing at President Donald Trump's inauguration, when so many others refused, he was labeled right-wing, despite being a longtime conservative Democrat.
Throw politics out. He didn't follow a certain path. He just wanted to let you know that, hey, I salute my flag and I love this country, and I'm going to scream that from the mountaintops.
Congratulations, Toby.
His music sparked both praise and criticism. He was divisive, complicated, a country music legend. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Mount Arrowsmith near Port Alberni, BC. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.